Hey there YouTube, Speedrobo here, and today I have a Duo Bermuda Triangle deck profile. Today is going to be a bit of a long one as I run some cards in this deck that go a bit against the norm, so I'm going to take some time at the end of the video to explain why it is I do what I do. But first off is a deck profile, and I'm going to get through it nice and quick for those of you who aren't interested in the explanation at the end of the video. So, to start, I have the Forerunner, Duo Lovers Seen Her Darling, and I run 3 extra copies of her in the deck. She's the old classic Duo starter. Act Rearguard, put this unit into your soul. If you have a Bermuda Triangle Vanguard, choose up to one of your units with Duo in its card name, and return all of those duplicate units to your hand. So if you have 3 copies of Peace on the field and use this ability, you get to bounce all 3 copies of Peace. Next is triggers. I run 2 Duo heal triggers, and this is one of the things I'm going to be explaining at the end of the video as to why I only run 2 heals. Then I run 4 copies of Duo Love Joker Chulim. This card is absolutely fantastic and acts as a sort of wild card for any duplicating you want to do. Auto Rearguard Counterblast 1 and put this unit on top of your deck. When your other unit is returned to your hand from rear, if you have a Vanguard with Duo in its card name, you may pay the cost. If you do, search your deck for a copy of the unit that got bounced, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. And for those of you who are familiar with Duo, you'll know that this ability is phenomenal. Next, I run 2 copies of Duo Nightwing Tangrowlio. She's a stand trigger with a handy little ability, Auto Counterblast 1. When this unit is returned to your hand from rearguard, if you have a Vanguard with Duo in its card name, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose one of your other Bermuda Triangle units, and that unit gains 4,000 power until the end of turn. Then, if you have 3 copies of her in your hand, you may reveal them and countercharge 1, effectively making her ability free. And my next triggers are 8 vanilla Duo crits. I run them because crits are the best trigger for this clan, usually, and they've got Duo in their card name, and I need to counterblast Duos specifically. So, there you go. 8 vanilla crits. Grade 1s are next on the list. I run 4 copies of Duo Gorgeous Lady Kazuha. Kazuha here acts like a grade 1 mini Heart Roan. Auto Rearguard Counterblast 1 with Duo in its card name. There's that Duo-specific counterblast I was talking about. When an attack hits a Vanguard during the battle with this unit boosted, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose one of your other Rearguards with Duo in its card name, return that card to your hand, search your deck for up to 1 card with the same name as that unit, reveal it to your opponent, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck. So on hit, duplicate your units. Pretty solid card. Next is everyone's favorite Duo Grade 1, Duo Petite Idol Peace. Auto Counterblast 1. When this unit is returned to your hand from rearguard, if you have a Vanguard with Duo in its card name, you may pay the cost. If you do, draw a card, reveal 3 copies of Peace from your hand, countercharge 1. So if you've got 3 Peace in your hand, when one of your Peace gets bounced, she is free. So if you have 2 in your hand, bounce 1, activate its ability, draw 1, reveal these, countercharge 1, making it a free draw as long as you have an open counterblast to pay for the cost initially. This card is probably the main combo piece of the deck. It's what makes everything work nicely together. Then, I'm sure everyone was expecting this, we've got 4 perfect guards. Prism Duo Ira. She's just a vanilla perfect guard with no other abilities on it, no countercharge, no harmony, nothing like that. The reason why I run this one in this deck is because it has the Duo card name, so that way I can clone her using my cloning abilities. If you run a different perfect guard, you aren't going to be able to clone it, and if it goes into your damage zone, you can't counterblast it for your abilities. So that's why I still run the Duo one. Also, this deck doesn't really have a problem with counterblast, as nothing's really that counterblast heavy. and I'll explain a little bit more of that at the end of the video. Last grade 1, 2 copies of Duo Clear Parasol Kura. Auto, Soul Blast 2, when she gets placed. If you have a Bermuda Triangle Vanguard, you may pay the cost. If you do, Countercharge 2. The Countercharge is nice, but she's in here primarily to empty the soul. And once again, I'll be explaining that a little bit more at the end of the video, but her Countercharge is nice, and I only have space for 2, so she's a 2 of. We'll just keep progressing up 1 grade at a time. Grade 2s are next on the list, with 4 copies of Duo Mini Hat Roan. 9K Grade 2 Auto Vanguard Rearguard Counterblast 1. When she hits a Vanguard, if you have a Bermuda Triangle Vanguard, you may pay the cost. If you do, bounce a Bermuda Triangle, clone it, shuffle your deck. This card is great. Everybody who's familiar with Duo is familiar with this. She is awesome. Next on the Grade 2 list, we have 4 copies of Duo Blue Marine Chateau Thames. He has an identical ability to Peace. Now, I know that most people don't run Thames in the deck, and this is one of my more different cards, and I'll be explaining as to why I run Thames more at the end of the video, but the important part is that the skill is identical to Peace. Bounce Thames, reveal 3 Thames, the draw is free. Good stuff right there. And the last grade 2, 2 copies of Duo Falling Heart Quancy. Auto Counterblast Soul Blast. When this unit is bounced, you may pay the cost. If you do, draw a card. Odds are you won't be using her skill. She's in here because she is the Legion mate. And this is another card that is a little bit different from the norm, and once again I'll be talking about her at the end of the video. Grade 3s, going right into it. 2 copies of Duo Falling Heart Victoria. Act Legion with Quancy, and Auto. When this unit legions, choose one of your rear guards with Duo in its card name, put it back in your hand, search your deck for a duplicate, show it to your opponent, shuffle your deck. So when she performs Legion, for free, you get to bounce a card and clone a card. That's very important. I love this card, and as a bonus, she gets an extra 3,000 power when attacking if you've got another unit in her column. So even if you're not Legioned, you can ride her, put a 7k behind her, and swing for 21, which is really nice. And this is another card that differs from the norm, and I'll talk about her at the end. Last grade 3. 4 copies of Prism Image Vert. Who doesn't know Vert at this point? She is fantastic. The first break ride for Bermuda Triangle. Auto Limit Break. When a Bermuda Triangle rides this unit, draw a card. Choose up to 2 of your Bermuda Triangle rear guards. Return them to your hand. Choose your Vanguard, and that unit gains 10,000 power. And Continuous Vanguard. During your turn, if the number of Bermuda Triangle rear guards you have is 4 or more, this unit gains 2,000 power, and she's got Lord, which, thanks to Clan Fight, doesn't even matter anymore. So, Prism Image Vert is great, and she's a Prism. She's not a Duo, so she's a little bit of a weird one, and surprise, surprise, I'll be talking about her at the end. The G-Zone! Woo! We finally made it. Unsurprising, 4 copies of School Idol Olivia. I'm not even going to talk about this card. We all know who she is and what she does. If you're building a Bermuda Triangle deck, 4 copies is expected. You can get away with 2, but 4 is best. Then we have 4 copies of Prism Image Sunshine Vert. Auto Vanguard Limit Break 4. Choose a face-down card with this card name in your G-Zone, turn it face up, and discard 3 cards from your hand. At the end of the battle that this unit attacked a Vanguard, if you have a heart card with Prism in its card name, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose up to 2 of your rear guards with Prism in their card name, return them to your hand, put this unit into your G-Zone face up, choose up to 1 grade 3 card with Prism in its card name from your hand, and write it as stand. Now, the only thing you have to do to get this card working is Persona Flip, and discard 3. Everything else in here is optional. If you can't do it, don't do it. So even though this deck only has 4 prisms in it, this card can still happen. You don't need to bounce the rear guards with a prism in their card name to re-ride a card from your hand. And that's really nice. So that's why she's in the deck, and that's why this deck's Prism Light, but even with just Vert, this card can still work. Then we have 4 copies of one of my favorite strides ever, Prism Promise Princess Labrador. Act Vanguard once per turn. Persona Flip. If you have a heart card with Prism in its card name, choose up to 2 of your rear guards, and until end of turn they gain 5,000 power and auto rear guard. At the end of the battle, if this unit attacked or boosted, you may pay the cost. If you do, put that unit into your hand. The only thing Princess Labrador requires to get her ability activated is a Persona Flip and a heart card with Prism. The rear guards chosen don't have to be prisms. They can be duos, they can be anything you want. This card is phenomenal as a first stride, because she can be used as your first stride to put massive pressure on your opponent right out of the gate. Love this card. Then, 1 copy of Legendary Prism Duo Nectaria. Auto Vanguard. When this unit's attack hits a Vanguard, choose up to 1 of your rear guards and return it to your hand. If you have a heart card with Prism in its card name, choose a card from your hand, call it to rear guard. That unit gains 5,000 power until the end of turn. But if you have a heart card with Duo in its card name, search your deck for a duplicate of the card that got bounced, put it into your hand, reveal it to your opponent, shuffle your deck. I love Nectaria. Always thought she was great. If you are on Vert, she gives you multi-attacks with a nice power bonus. If you're on Victoria, she allows you to duplicate units for free. This card is so nice. And if you're on Vert, she gives your Vanguard the Duo card name. If you're on Victoria, she gives your Vanguard the Prism card name. So even if you aren't on the right Vanguard you want at the right time to activate your abilities, all you have to do is stride to Nectaria, and your problem is solved. And the last 3 cards in the G-Zone are G-Guardians. I run 1 Nasha and 2 Leona. I only use 3 G-Guardians in this deck because I want more space for strides. And you really don't need more than 3 G-Guardians. It's very rare for me to use all 4 in a game. Furthermore, this deck's whole strategy is draw a bunch of cards and have a brick wall defense. So it's not hard to pitch an extra 10k shield or 2 from your hand in order to stop a big attack if you can't pay for the G-Guardian. While there are only 2 heals in this deck, we've got a Legion, so they're recyclable. Meaning that it's no problem at all to keep putting heals back in your deck to keep G-Guarding. Sailor's Melody Nasha's okay. When she's placed on Guardian Circle, you can reveal a card from your hand, and then if you have the same grade as that card on your field, she gains 5,000 power. It works pretty okay when you're in Legion, as you can reveal a grade 3 or grade 2, but if you're on Vert, then you have to have the grade 3 in your hand for it to work, because odds are you're not going to have any other cards on your field. This is Bermuda Triangle, after all. We bounce cards. Then hand-in-hand Leona is a little bit better. When she's placed on Guardian Circle, choose 1 of your rear guards and return it to your hand. If you do, choose a card from your hand, call it to Guardian Circle, and if that unit has the same card name as the card bounced with this effect, it gains 5,000 power and shield. So you can bounce units during your opponent's turn. I just wish the call was optional, but other than that, pretty good, and you can still use it to activate Peace or Thames during your opponent's turn, or even Quancy if you feel like it. So that's the deck profile. Let's get into some explanations of the different cards I run. The first card I want to talk about is Prism Image Vert. So I run 4 copies of Vert in this deck. And even though she isn't a duo, she's in my duo deck. Why? Well, I noticed that in a pure duo deck, the deck isn't very good anymore. It used to be great, but now that we have G Guardians and things like Spectral Blaster Diablo and Next Stage, Gear Groovy, things that can provide such an outrageous, over-the-top, aggressive presence, and every deck has extra defense options, Duo's Iron Wall isn't as impenetrable as it used to be. So to answer that, Duo needs to step up their aggression game. And I felt the best way to do that was Vert, and I experimented with many different options, and putting in 4 copies of Vert seemed to be a good answer. The reason is that by putting in Vert, we gain access to the most powerful strides in the clan. So in a normal duo deck, the only real aggressive stride we used to have is School Idol Olivia, and while she's great, she just isn't enough anymore. But with Prism Promise Labrador giving a free distributed 10k power and extra bounces to handle against field control decks, and Prism Image Sunshine Vert giving us a very strong Vanguard restand, Duo finally has the aggressive presence it needs. Now, Vert being a Prism doesn't usually hurt the Duo deck overall, as most Duo abilities either require a Duo Vanguard or require Duo Counterblast. Duo Counterblast isn't a problem, as Vert is the only non-Duo in the deck, so odds are we're going to have that easy peasy. And for when we need a Duo Vanguard, if we're stuck on Vert, we can just stride into Prism Duo Nectaria, and that problem is solved too. Not to mention, with the Prism Heart, Nectaria becomes a pretty solid option for gaining extra high-powered rearguard attacks in the deck. And that's why I run Vert. The next card I'm going to be talking about is Duo Falling Heart Victoria and Duo Falling Heart Quancy. Now, Victoria's the leader and Quancy's the mate. I'm not really going to be talking about Quancy all too much. She's just in here to be Victoria's mate. So we're going to be focusing on Victoria right now. Most people run as the Legion in Duo Lovely Angel Nemul, and her mate is Duo Lovely Devil Vepar. Now, the reason why I prefer Victoria over Nemul is because Victoria is free. She puts a lot less strain on my resources, and in my testing, I found that Victoria was also more consistent. So Nemul's ability is that it has an act, Legion with Vepar. Auto Vanguard once per turn. Counterblast 2. When your unit is returned to your hand from rearguard, if this unit is in Legion, you may pay the cost. If you do, search your deck for up to 2 cards with the same name as the unit returned to your hand, reveal them to your opponent, put them into your hand, shuffle your deck. Then you may choose up to 3 cards with the same card name as a unit on your Vanguard circle, reveal them to your opponent. If you do, countercharge 2. Then her third skill is Act Vanguard once per turn, Soul Blast 1 Duo, choose one of your rearguards, return it to your hand. So Nemul gets you 1 extra card over Victoria. However, it costs you 2 Counterblast and a Soul. Now, if you reveal 3 copies of either your leader or your mate, or a combination of those 2, you do get the Countercharge 2 back. But you have to have that open to Counterblast, and you have to have the cards in your hand. Why I find this a problem is that ideally, you're going to be targeting Vepar with her Soul Blast 1 to bounce, then her once per turn auto skill to get your 2 copies of Vepar to pay for your skill. When Vepar gets bounced, her ability is Counterblast 1, choose one of your rearguards, search your deck for a duplicate of it, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck, reveal 3 copies of Vepar, countercharge 1. It doesn't bounce the unit she targets, it just duplicates it, which is fine because it can help you set up. However, for Nemul's combo to work out perfectly, you have to have either Peace or Thames in your hand, and a copy of Vepar in your hand. Well, you also have to put a copy of Vepar on your Vanguard circle in order to Legion, meaning there's only going to be 2 copies of Vepar left in your deck, If a single copy of Vepr goes into your damage zone, it's over. The combo's broken, and you now have to pay for Nemul's costs unless you happen to luck out and just have what you need in your hand, which isn't likely because 2 out of those 6 cards are going on your Vanguard circle. Not only that, it is going to cost you Soul, and Soul isn't something Duo gets a whole lot of. So while you do get the 1 extra card with Nemul over Victoria, Victoria's being free and the flexibility of Victoria that no matter what happens, no matter what your situation is, you can Legion, bounce, and get your card. I just prefer Victoria as a whole. Now, you can argue that Vepr is a better Legion mate, but because of how Vepr works, you need to run 4 of her in the deck. And as the grade 2 lineup stands, we don't really have space for her. We have 4 Mini-Hat, 4 Thames, and then 2 Legion Mate slots. So what's going to get taken out in this situation? Probably Thames, and that's what I've seen most people do. Most people don't run Thames. Well, I'll get into why I don't like that so much later, but I don't like taking out Thames. Now, if you do want to run Nemul in this deck, that's fine. What I recommend taking out for the Legion Mate instead is 2 Roam. That way you have less run in your deck, less strain on your Counterblast. It's easier to just pay that 2 for Nemul and just get it done, and then you'll have your 4 copies of Vepr. But overall, I do prefer to use Duo Falling Heart Victoria. She's free, she's consistent, and I don't have to run 4 copies of her or her mate in order to pay for skills. Now, the next card I'm going to be talking about is Duo Blue Marine Chateau Thames. As I mentioned earlier, because most people run Nemul, this slot's usually taken up with Vepr. Now, the reason why I like Thames so much is that he adds great consistency to the deck, as it is a backup piece. In most Nemul builds I've seen, they only run 4 copies of Peace because, like I said, Thames is usually taken out for the mate. And that means that they have to get, that deck has to get Peace in their hand, and if Peace goes into the damage zone, it's over. The combo's done. But with Thames, you have a backup Peace, your consistency's higher in your opening hand. You have 8 different cards, Thames or Peace, that you can draw to help set up for your combos. And that just is so nice. So long story short, Thames is a backup piece, and that's why I like to run it. Now, the last card I'm going to be explaining a little bit about is my heal trigger and stand trigger. Why do I choose not to run 4 heals? It seems like a no-brainer. Of course you want 4 heals in the deck. Heals are great. They G-guard, they remove damage. Well, they aren't so great in Duo from what I've found out. In Duo, you're going to be drawing so many cards that defense shouldn't be something that you ever really have to worry about too much. And lots of times, drive checking this heal trigger can really mess up the deck. If you get it in the early game and you remove crucial counterblasts you need for Kazuha or Roam to work in order to bounce Peace or bounce Darling and get your combo pieces together, that's super bad. Also, in the late game, it can remove the limit break from Sunshine Vert, and then you don't get your restand. And that's also bad. Defense shouldn't really be an issue, and since we aren't running Nemul, we don't have to worry about Vepr or Peace going into the damage zone as much, so taking cards out of the damage zone isn't as big of a deal as they are in a Nemul-focused build. So that's why I only run 2 heals. Now, why I run the stands instead of some other crit trigger is they've got the Duo card name, and we don't have another Duo crit. Also, Tangaroleo's skill is kind of nice. A Counterblast 1 for +4 isn't always worth it, but because I run Victoria, I don't have to worry about my Counterblast near as much as I would if I was running Nemul. The only boss card in this deck that requires Counterblast is Olivia, and she only needs 1. All of my other strides and grade 3s are free. So odds are I'm going to have an extra Counterblast or 2 floating around to use Tangreleo's skill and increase my numbers, making me hit harder. That's why I like Tangreleo. That's why I only run 2 heals. Next up, I'm going to be sharing some of the tricks and combos that you can do with this deck. The first combo I'm going to share is the old duo classic, the 16-card draw. What you need for this is Peace, Darling, and maybe a Chulum or 2. So, to get started, ride to Victoria. Now, at this point, you've probably been using Mini Hat on your Vanguard or Kazuha on your Rearguard, and you've duplicated Darling or Peace a couple of times. So, what you do at this point is you then ride Victoria, as I said, call Peace, and then what you do is you call Love Trump if you don't already have 1 or 2 Peace in your hand. Next, Legion. Take 4 cards from your drop zone back into your deck, pull out Quancy, and use the Legion ability to duplicate Peace. Search your deck for another piece, put it into your hand. Then, use Love Trump, goes back into the deck, get another piece. So at this point you should have 3 or 4 Peace. Activate Peace's ability since she got bounced. Draw a card. Then, call Darling. Call all 4 Peace. Darling into Soul. Bounce all 4 Peace to your hand. Draw 4 cards. Call another Darling. Odds are you duplicated 1 in the early game, or if you already had 3 or 4 Peace in your hand, you duplicated 1 with Victoria, or you drew another one just off of your deck because you have 3 in your deck, or you drew another Darling off of the 4 cards that you drew with Peace. So you do it again. Bounce all 4. Odds are at some point you've drawn another Darling off of the 8 cards you've drawn with Peace this now, or you've been really good at duplicating your Darlings. Call it. Bounce it. Again, odds are you've got the 4th one, or you can just stop at 3. 3's still good. And now you've drawn 16 cards. Well, 17 if you count the one you got off of bouncing Peace with your Legion. And that's how the combo works. It doesn't sound too consistent, but you'd be surprised how many draws you can consistently get. With Love Joker Chulum acting as a wild card, it's pretty easy to get the cards you need in your hand. Mini Hat, duplicating cards in the early game, because odds are your opponent can't block all of your attacks that early, and if they do, it's still pretty good for you, as their defense and rear guards have been cut down just by them trying to block Mini Hat. And you can also, if you've already got the piece, duplicate Darling with your Legion skill. Plenty of options here, and it's easy to get, 12, 10 draws. I usually get around 10 draws minimum, up to 16 or 17 if things are going really well. And that's the 16 draw combo. The next combo I'm going to talk about is the Infinite Legion Loop. So all you need to pull this one off is Victoria and Quancy on your Vanguard circle, or your Soul would work too. A Victoria in your hand, and a Duo Clear Parasol in your hand. What you do is you ride to Victoria. Then you call Kura, Soul Blasting Victoria and Quancy. Next, Legion, sending back the Victoria and Quancy you just Soul Blasted. Probably Legion with the Quancy you got sent back. Pull Kura back into your hand. Now, with the amount of draw power in this deck, your deck is probably very, very thin at this point. So your odds of drawing or drive checking the Victoria you put back is really, really high, meaning once you get it back, ride, call, Soul Blast, Legion, return, ride, call, Soul Blast, Legion, return, and just do that every single turn, rewriting to Victoria, and this way you will never, ever deck out. I've been Speedrobo. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to answer them. See you later.